Hey everyone, it's Harry, your host. Good day to you all, my fellow guys. Now, if you clicked on this video, it's because you're trying to make sense of the latest Epstein files release. Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? Now, I've largely stayed away from this topic, not because it isn't important, but because so many other creators have already covered it. And I don't like making content just for content's sake, especially when I have nothing new to add to the conversation. That said, I do keep getting requests from people who genuinely cannot wrap their heads around what these files actually are, why they are being released now, and how to interpret them. So, in this video, I'm going to explain what exactly happened, why this is happening, and how we maybe should be understanding everything that we're seeing. So, let's dive in. Firstly, let's briefly recap why anyone is even talking about Jeffrey Epstein in the first place. Who is this guy? Well, long story short, Jeffrey Epstein went from being a complete nobody with no clear career path, education, title, or notable achievement to becoming one of the world's most connected financial power brokers. He amassed enormous wealth, elite access, and relationships that placed him shoulder to shoulder with some of the most powerful and influential figures on the planet. According to the New York Times, Epstein made much of his fortune by providing tax and estate services to billionaires. He was also a prolific social networker whose connections included business leaders, royalty, politicians, and academics. His friendships with public figures such as Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, and the Crown Princess of Norway attracted significant controversy. Documents released by the House Democratic Caucus in September 2025 also showed that he maintained connections with billionaires like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Larry Summers, and influential figures like Steve Bannon. Okay, now I'm not going to go too deep into Epstein's background because it's already been extensively covered elsewhere. What matters for our purposes in this video, however, is leverage. Leverage is the key concept that explains Epstein's role and his value. Intelligence agencies, political operators, and power brokers don't simply accumulate information. They accumulate leverage over people and institutions. Now, that leverage can come in many forms. Sometimes it's positive, access to capital, donors, or elite networks. Other times it's coercive, exploiting personal weaknesses, secrets, or illegal behavior. In Epstein's world, that leverage often revolved around sex. His properties and parties functioned as these environments where powerful people could indulge in desires that they could never safely pursue in public. Those desires, once documented or facilitated, became leverage, and once leverage exists, control follows. This context explains why Epstein was closely connected to figures like Donald Trump in the 1990s. Trump's acquisition of the Miss Universe pageant placed hundreds, if not thousands, of young, aspiring models into his orbit. That environment provided Epstein with access to a steady stream of young, beautiful women, which he could then funnel into his broader network. But Epstein's activities went far beyond consensual adult behavior. He routinely procured prostitutes, trafficked human beings, and engaged in non-consensual sex, including of minors. By 2005, numerous young women had already come forward alleging that Epstein had sexually assaulted them or arranged for their abuse. That year, Palm Beach police opened an investigation after a parent reported that Epstein had sexually abused her 14-year-old daughter. Federal investigators later identified at least 36 girls, some as young as 14, who alleged sexual abuse. In 2008, Epstein pleaded guilty in Florida state court to procuring a child for prostitution and soliciting a prostitute. As part of a highly controversial plea deal approved by then U.S. Attorney General Alexander Aosta, Epstein served just under 13 months in custody, much of which on work release. By 2008, Epstein was officially convicted as a serial sex offender. Now, this is very important because anyone who associated with Epstein after that point knew without a doubt that he was a convicted rapist of underage girls. So when you see correspondence involving figures like Noam Chomsky, Elon Musk, David Stern, and many others in the Epstein files, understand this clearly. They knew that Epstein was a rapist. Now, continued contact does not automatically prove criminal guilt, but it raises serious questions about judgment, ethics, and integrity. Despite his previous charges, Epstein didn't stop. In 2019, he was arrested again, this time on federal sex trafficking charges. Before his trial could begin, however, Epstein was found dead in his jail cell, officially ruled a suicide. Now, because of his death, all federal criminal charges against him were dismissed, but there was still new information that could come out about him because Epstein had maintained a decades-old-long partnership with Ghislaine Maxwell, who recruited and groomed underage girls on his behalf. In 2021, Maxwell was convicted in federal court on sex trafficking and conspiracy charges for helping Epstein abuse minors. So, despite his untimely death and the fact that the government dropped the charges against him, we were still able to obtain new information through T. Maxwell case. Elite social circle and the abrupt end to his prosecution fueled widespread suspicion. Many people believed he maintained detailed records of powerful individuals, used those records for blackmail, and was ultimately silenced to protect those people. Public skepticism intensified due to the inconsistency surrounding his death. The medical examiner's findings, surveillance failures, and the sheer scale of evidence collected against him. The term Epstein files refers to evidence gathered in the criminal investigations into Epstein and his associates. These materials stored in the FBI Sentinel system include flight logs, contact books, emails, photographs, videos, and court documents. Portions had been released in heavily redacted form gradually over the years, but most of it has remained sealed until now. As more victims came forward demanding accountability, and as public pressure grew, the files became a cultural and political issue. Despite his own documented association with Epstein publicly, Donald Trump promised transparency during his re-election campaign in 2024. In fact, during the Biden administration, Trump allies, including Kash Patel, promoted claims that the FBI was deliberately withholding an Epstein client list and urged its release. Shortly after Trump returned to office in 2025, the U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi told the Fox News journalist John Roberts that the Justice Department would publish the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. She specifically said, "It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That has been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that." A week later, on February 27th, she released documents that contained no significant new information, however. Faced with outcry from a disappointed public, Bondi demanded that the FBI director, Kash Patel, provide the extensive material she had originally requested from him. A few months later, on June 6th, the Joe Rogan Experience aired an interview with Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, who said of the Epstein matter, "We've reviewed all the information, and the American public is going to get as much as we can release." The DOJ publicly released a memo on July 7th, stating it did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties and would not release further Epstein-related documents. When asked what Bondi meant in February when she said that Epstein material was on her desk, the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt said Bondi had been referring to the entirety of all the paperwork related to Epstein's crimes rather than any specific client list. Bondi offered a similar clarification at a cabinet meeting the following day. The administration's position drew criticism from across the political spectrum. Democratic representatives challenged the findings while right-wing activists and influencers, including the Hodge twins, Alex Jones, Rogan O'Hanley, and Liz Wheeler, expressed skepticism. Bondi herself faced particular criticism from many in the MAGA movement. Joe Rogan called the administration's reversal a line in the sand, particularly for supporters who had backed Trump based on promised transparency surrounding the Epstein files. This began to frustrate Donald Trump. In mid-July, he characterized the Epstein files as falsified documents created by political opponents such as Biden, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton. Now, this is important because remember, Trump himself and his surrogates were calling for the Epstein files to be released, and this goes as far back as 2015. When Trump was asked for his thoughts on former President Bill Clinton, he responded, "Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of problems. Later that same year, when asked again about Clinton and the alleged sexual abuse that took place on Epstein's private Caribbean island, Trump said that island was really a cesspool. There's no question about it. Just ask Prince Andrew. He'll tell you about it. Fast forward a decade to his campaign for re-election, and you have tons of statements from Trump surrogates and his allies proving that this isn't a Democratic Party instigated campaign to hurt Donald Trump. In December of 2023, Kash Patel posted on Truth Social, "I've been calling for all of it to be released so the public can have accountability. We must find out who pedoed around with Epstein." In September of 2024, Patel posted again on Truth Social, "Anyone else want to see the Diddy list that the FBI and DOJ have but won't release like the Epstein Black Book? The deep state won't end until we put Donald Trump back at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue." And in January of 2025, at his own Senate confirmation hearing, Kash Patel publicly stated that he would help secure the release of the Epstein files. Senator Marshall Blackburn asked him, "So, will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?" Patel responded, "Absolutely, Senator." And later in May of 2025, Kash Patel again reiterated that he would secure the release. When Fox News' Brett Baier asked him, "You're not going to withhold information from the public, are you?" Patel responded, "I'm not going to withhold information from the American public ever." Elon Musk also chimed in. Musk, in a conversation with Tucker Carlson, wrote, "Part of why Kamala is getting so much support is that if Trump wins, that Epstein client list is going to become public. And some of those billionaires behind Kamala are terrified of that outcome." And as we stated earlier, Trump's own son called for the release of the Epstein list. While the president's son does not have an official position in Trump's administration on the campaign trail, he emerged as one of the most vocal figures calling on the Epstein files to be released. In July of 2023, Trump Jr. posted on X, "Show us all the Epstein client list now. Why would anyone protect those scumbags?" Ask yourselves this question daily, and the answer becomes very apparent. In January of 2024, he posted again, "Everyone knows Bill Clinton was on Jeffrey Epstein's plane in Island a lot. Literally, no one is at all surprised that he's all over the release. What we want to know is all the other names that the government has been hiding and running cover for. That will actually be revealing." Then in June of 2024, at the Turning Point USA event, Trump Jr. publicly stated, "I am on every list except the Epstein list. We haven't heard anything about that one in a while. How is it that my father could be convicted of 34 crimes, but no one on Epstein's list has even been brought to light? It's almost like they're trying to protect these pedophiles." So Trump characterizing the Epstein files as a hoax created by political opponents is absurd. Now, despite Trump's resistance, even he couldn't convince MAGA to give up on the Epstein files. Public interest continued and culminated in Congress attempting to force its release. In July of 2025, Congressman Rowana introduced the Epstein Files Transparency Act, requiring the Attorney General to release all related files within 30 days and provide Congress with an unredacted list of all government officials and politically exposed persons named in them. Following this, Trump increasingly resisted questions about Epstein. Shortly after Rowana's bill was introduced, he stated, "I don't understand it. Why would they be so interested? He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't." A few weeks later, FBI Director and Trump ally Kash Patel testified before Congress that Epstein acted alone and had no connection to other people in regards to sex trafficking. FBI Director Kash Patel told U.S. senators that there is no credible information in case files that Jeffrey Epstein young women to anyone other than himself. Republican Louisiana Senator John Kennedy asked Patel about his knowledge of the Epstein files. "You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?" Patel responded, "There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. Ham Bondi, appointed Attorney General in February of 2025, initially promised transparency, but then later worked to limit the scope of disclosures, citing victim protection. This combination of deflection, minimization, and delay has only intensified suspicion. It seems clear that Trump, Kash Patel, and Pam Bondi were attempting to reduce the interest in the Epstein files and turn public attention away from them. That obviously didn't work, however. So, in September of 2025, Representative Thomas Massie filed a discharge petition to force a House vote on the transparency bill that Rwana introduced back in July. The bill passed overwhelmingly 427-1 and was signed into law. Despite the legal mandate, the Department of Justice failed to release all the files on time. Initial releases were heavily redacted, which drew bipartisan criticism. After months of delay, however, on January 30th of this year, the DOJ finally released approximately 3.5 million pages of documents. These are the Epstein files that everyone is now discussing, and they are vast. They reveal disturbing insights into elite networks, power structures, financial practices, and patterns of abuse. It's hard to focus on just one thing because there are so many documents with so many controversies. And it turns out actually that this is only about half of all the documents there are. So there still needs to be another release of about another 3 million documents. But in summary, we have seen information confirming at the very least that certain theories or suspicions are more than just speculative conspiracies or anti-Semitic tropes. The idea that elites are engaging in demonic, satanic, violent sexual rituals is not just some crackpipe Freemason Illuminati underground conspiracy theory originating from 4chan troll accounts. It is actually a legitimate question that needs to be further explored and investigated, and the Epstein files confirm that as there are references to it via eyewitness testimony about dismembered bodies and all sorts of disgusting, violent acts that the government has had access to for many years now. I want to show you tweets that you need to see that summarize much about what these new Epstein files reveal about the mindset, beliefs, and practices of someone like Jeffrey Epstein and the people he's connected to. This is the way the Jew makes money and made a fortune in the past 10 years selling short the shipping futures let the Goem deal in the real world. This tweet is in reference to a 2009 email in which Jeffrey Epstein replied to Roger Schank. Then David Miller includes a quote from an article in which the Sephardic leader Rabbi Ovea Isef says, "Go were born only to serve us. Without that, they have no place in the world, only to serve the people of Israel." In response to that, Candace Owens tweeted, "Remember at the end of last year when I was called anti-Semitic for telling you this is the literal religious worldview of many people in power? Type in Badr or I in the Epstein files and be sure to tag a Christian who needs to wake up and leave the Zionist cause." So, what should the takeaway from all of this be? How do you make sense of 3.5 million documents? Firstly, Kash Patel and Pam Bondi definitely attempted to cover up the Epstein files and should be impeached for doing so. In fact, Rwana has already stated that an impeachment filing is already drafted. Secondly, these are not all the files. On Sunday, Rwana told Meet the Press, the release is not good enough. And if we don't get the remaining files, then Thomas Massie and I are prepared to move on impeachment or contempt. But even these files shocked the conscience of the country. I mean, you have some of the most wealthy individuals, tech leaders, finance leaders, politicians, all implicated in some way. He said, "It's frankly one of the largest scandals in my view in our country's history. There is a demand for elite accountability. Even the victims of Epstein's crimes are not satisfied." On Friday, a group of Epstein victims in a statement slammed the DOJ for the incomplete release of the files. Quote, "This latest release of Jeffrey Epstein files is being sold as transparency, but what it actually does is expose survivors. Once again, survivors are having their names and identifying information exposed while the men who abused us remain hidden and protected. That is outrageous. As survivors, we should never be the ones named, scrutinized, and re-traumatized while Epstein's enablers continue to benefit from secrecy. This is a betrayal of the very people this process is supposed to serve. Thirdly, the issue of Israel first Jewish supremacy is real, and it's time to stop hiding behind claims of anti-Semitism. Powerful Jewish elites in this country are in fact using their influence and connection to advance one another's wealth and power, openly admitting to engaging in questionable financial transactions and laughing at the non-Jewish goyim along the way. Their loyalty to Israel is real and is equal to potentially even greater than their loyalty to America. For example, one crucial FBI document revealed in these Epstein files is an interview between an agent and a confidential human source, otherwise known as a CHS. A CS is essentially someone who has access to information that is valuable for law enforcement or intelligence operations. This specific CHS claimed the following. 1. The infamous Jewish Zionist lawyer Alan Dershowitz, who represented Epstein, was co-opted by the MSAD and subscribed to their mission. 2. Dershowitz influenced many students from wealthy families such as Jared Kushner. 3. Epstein was serving both U.S. and Allied intelligence, and we all know who this ally is, of course. 4. Epstein trained under Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak as a spy. And 5. The Jewish movement Shabbat was doing everything they can to co-opt the Trump presidency. And finally, Trump was compromised by Israel. And Jared Kushner, his Jewish Zionist son-in-law, is the one actually running the White House. Since returning to office, Trump has given Israel billions of dollars and tiptoed on the edge of an incredibly destructive and unpopular war with Iran on behalf of Zionist interests. In fact, on the same day as the Epstein file release, Trump bypassed Congress and approved a major new arms sale to Israel worth almost $7 billion. So, while there are many controversies in the Epstein files, I think this one is the most disturbing and needs to be explored. All in all, while the Department of Justice hopes this will be the end of the Epstein files controversy, it seems that this is actually just the beginning. As every hour, people gain deeper and deeper insight into the crimes hidden in the 3.5 million documents revealed. The web of contaminated politicians, billionaires, actors, and elite continues to grow, implicating almost the entire oligarchy in one way or another. So, there are a few things that need to happen after this. 1. The rest of the files need to be released. 2. More investigations need to be opened up regarding third parties mentioned in the files who conducted business with Epstein. 3. Those attempting to cover up the Epstein controversy, such as Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, need to be impeached and investigated. 4. An investigation into Alan Dershowitz, Jared Kushner, and the MSAD's influence over Trump needs to take place. Now, I quickly glossed over some pieces of information, such as Epstein's connection to the MSAD. So I suggest you watch this interview where journalist Max Blumenthal unpacks the MSAD connections to Epstein with Judge Napolitano. So what do you think? What are the major takeaways from the Epstein files that you believe people need to know about? Let me know in the comments section. Also, I want to give a very special shout out to all the members of my channel. Thank you for supporting my work. Without you, I wouldn't be able to keep the lights on. Out of all my members, I want to give a very special thank you to Hello26. You have been with my channel for 19 months in a row now, so thank you for your trust in me. Now, if you're interested in becoming a member and supporting my channel, you can do that by clicking the link in the pinned comment of this video. Thanks for watching, and as always, take care of yourselves. Trust nothing, no lies. Free your mind. Everything is propaganda. Everything is propaganda. Everything is propaganda.